Video games. They're a massive part of our lives. In 2011 alone, gamers worldwide spent $24.75 billion on hardware, content, and accessories. They appeal to every demographic from young children to seniors. Let's face it, video games are a big deal. But there's an issue surrounding video games, and that issue is violence. 3 of the top-selling video games of 2011, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, and Battlefield 3, were rated M for mature, meaning they cannot legally be sold to minors because of violence, sexual content, language, and/or drug use. But this isn't new. Ever since the early days of Mortal Kombat and Doom, concerned parents have questioned the effects of violence in games on children. And that's not even mentioning the media. Every time there is even a tenuous link to video games and real-life violence, the news media jumps on it. This idea that video games cause violence is everywhere in the news media. But how legitimate is this assertion? Can video games actually be blamed for real-life actions? Let's look at some studies that try to answer this question. The first problem with the violent video game hypothesis is that studies have proven very inconclusive. For example, this study examining the reactions of Singapore young adults to 3 weeks of Grand Theft Auto found no differences in trait aggression among those who played a violent video game and those who did not. They also found no evidence that playing violent video games causes desensitization to violence. Another study disputed the idea that violent games cause aggressive behavior and instead may have the positive effect of being associated with increased visual spatial cognition. A Secret Service report into the profiles of 37 school shooting incidents further discredited the video game violence link when its study showed only 15% of shooters displayed some interest in violent video games. Only about half, 59%, displayed some interest in violent media of any kind, whether television, books, or whatnot, considerably lower than non-shooter males from other studies. Anderson Cooper pointed this out in a recent discussion following the Sandy Hook killings.
2 headlines of comprehensive reviews of all the available research tell the story. First, from Iowa State University, quote, ISU study proves conclusively that violent video game play makes more aggressive kids. Now here's one from the technology news site Ars Technica, quote, meta-analysis uncovers no real link between violence and gaming. 2 headlines, 2 reputable research psychologists, each looking at many individual studies and arriving at totally opposite conclusion.
And then there's this. This chart shows data from several first world countries and the relationship between video game spending per capita and gun-related murders per 100,000 people. There are the Netherlands, all the way to the right, at over $100 spent per capita, but with less than 0.5 gun murders per 100,000. In contrast is the US, where we spend only about $45 per capita, but have 6 times the rate of gun murders. Now let's look at juvenile violence in video games. As this chart shows, violent juvenile crime has been steadily decreasing over the past 15 years, and when you compare video game sales and violent juvenile crime over the time, the results are even clearer. So why is the news so quick to blame video games for violent crime, particularly school shootings? Well, frankly, video games are an easy target. It is easy to make the statement, lots of violent people play violent video games. Therefore, video games cause violence. But that forgets the key fact that correlation does not imply causation. There's also the fact that millions of people of all ages and types play video games. But it's simpler to portray gamers as an outside group, creating a moral panic by demonizing those who play violent video games as potential criminals. So what conclusions can we draw? Well, video games probably don't directly cause violence, and it's a serious oversimplification of human psychology to assume that mere exposure to simulated actions will turn someone into a killer. Should more research be done? Sure. It's important to keep people educated, so maybe we can better understand the real cause behind violence in our society. And that's the end of this little examination on video gaming. I hope you enjoyed it and learned some interesting things. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to play some Skyrim.